So when I was a kid, I would initiate conversations with my friends about the differences between young people and adults. And we would stay up late at slumber parties, sort of talking about like what changes. I remember like one of my friends in like sophomore year of high school calling it the machine. You like go in one end and you come out like different. We were like, what do they do to you in there? I can remember my friends and my cousins being just like giddy, sort of fiercely authentic in this way that kind of wore off. So when I was a young adult, I was acting, doing theater, doing some writing and directing. And my work, my income came from teaching performing arts to kids from kindergarten all the way through 8th grade. And I got to teach all of them. And it was this huge joy. My secret agenda was to help them keep the access open to the authentic, spontaneous, creative, expressive, intuitive part of themselves when that normally shuts down. And so my impression of that is that it tends to happen between like 5th and 8th grade, that kids can be like really joyful and sparkly eyed and emotional and expressive and really creative. And then they come back after the summer before 5th grade and they're cool. So this was like kind of a guiding principle for me in working with all these young people is like, how do I use the tools that I had, which were basically performing arts tools, and in particular in the tradition of Viola Spolin. So Viola Spolin is kind of considered the mother of improvisation, and she's from Chicago. Her mentor before her was Neva Boyd, and they both used games in order to heal the public through play. Neva Boyd created this series of games that were meant to help people recover from the trauma of the Great Depression. She was actually hired by the Works Progress Administration to do this, which is an amazing piece of lost American history. So her apprentice was Viola Spolin, who, like I said, people refer to as kind of the mother of improvisation. She adapted Boyd's games. As I understand it, there was a period in time a few decades later when a child labor law changed. When the adults came back from fighting World War II, kids were no longer supposed to work in the factories, and they came flooding back into the Chicago public school systems, and they couldn't play. They had been sitting in front of machines all day long, and they just kind of sat slumped over and alone on their breaks. So Spolin went, wow, what if we took these games that were designed to heal people and adapted them for children? So I teach in the tradition of Viola Spolin. And when I started teaching performing arts at this school, I used her games as they're meant to be used, which is sort of medicinally. You've got this whole section of games that are designed to help people listen better. You've got a whole section of games that are designed to help people have better give and take with each other. You got a whole section of games that are designed to help people access their own spontaneous creative imaginations. So these games do that. They reduce competition among people. They create ensemble. They set free your creativity. They help you build and create together. And I loved that they're tools. You can create games. You can invent games that have a certain aim. And I created this game. It's called Intuitive Treasure Hunter. It went like this. We played it in the car. You can play it on foot or on a train or whatever. And so whoever's turn it was to be in charge would sit in the passenger seat. I would be driving, and of course, only safely. But each kid would have an opportunity to be in charge of the car for 45 minutes. Basically, there's a promise inherent in the game. And the promise is that if the kid in charge makes all of their decisions based on a feeling of joy, that they will find their personal treasure. So the first time I played this game with anyone, I played it with kids who I taught, and they were excellent people. One of them we'll call Cheryl. She was sort of obsessed with horses, meaning that anytime she ever improvised a scene, there either was a horse or she was a horse. Anytime she made art that got put up on the walls in the school, it was of horses. So we start to drive, and we're just driving. And this is like, I'm going to drive and you tell me where to go. And she was like, fine. She's like, stop here. So I stop the car, and it's beautiful, but there's nothing happening. And I suddenly feel like a horrible person for doing this to these kids, because I think what I'm teaching them is actually that if they follow their intuition, they're not going to find anything. So I'm just sweating bullets, and I'm like, hey, this is nice. And she looks at me and Cheryl goes, yeah, it's really pretty out here. She's like, I don't think it's my personal treasure. And I was like, well, you have like 15 minutes left of your turn. Do you want to go somewhere else? But she's like, no, let's just stay here. Everyone is bored. And then all of a sudden, like, I look over at Cheryl and she lifts her chin up off her hand and her mouth is open and her eyes are wide. And she just, without saying anything, opens up the door and gets out of the car. And I follow her eye line and to like her trajectory to what she's walking towards in the middle of this field. And there's this giant white stallion walking in with the fog. She's like walking towards it as if she knows her destiny. And horse and girl just meet in the middle of this field. Holy shit. And the horse lets her feed it. It's not bridled. It's just this wandering, happy farm horse that is very sweet and tender. And when it finishes, the horse just leans down and gives her a little nuzzle, like right in the space between her shoulder and her neck. And then it walks away. And she turns around, this girl who has been obsessed with horses for her whole life, like lit up, transformed. And she walks back to the car and she just yells out, I found my treasure. My fear now is like, wow, what's going to compare to that?
Next week, episode 10, we're going outside, and there's treasure in the streets.
And I hope we will find something great.
From Superphonic Studios, this is Chicago. Listen every Sunday.